Quantum Nurse Freedom International live stream, and we are excited to have Tim Kirby back. And we are also, I'm also happy that Hartmut and John are co-hosting with me. We miss Roy and we miss Jane, but in the next other episodes, they'll be here with us. So we send greetings to all of you who can make it today, and also who we're grateful for all of you who would like, subscribe, and then share this episode, okay? Because the topic that we're going to have today is usually information that most of us get it wrong, or we always have like anything about Russia and China and Iran. It's like, whoa, it's like, well, just difficult to understand, or just difficult to believe that we're hearing it different from what is really happening. So Tim Kirby, it's his second time here, and I really like him to keep coming back because he is an American-born Russian political analyst and radio talk show host. He has lived in Russia since 2006 and writes on a wide variety of topics from geopolitics to ideology. He also does travel material in his YouTube, but I think that YouTube was censored or something, but he'll let us know on what's going on with that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he continues to play for the offensive line of the Moscow Spartans American Football Club. Okay.
Mm, yeah. So,
Yeah.
which I appreciate. I see, John, there in the background, you have a Corinthian helmet, which you could say is a Spartan helmet. So I appreciate that on your desk. But yeah, I still play for the Moscow Spartans. Getting near the end of my time on the football field, but not quite there yet. So yeah, about the channels and getting sort of banned. Well, the first thing is I did a lot of the travel material for Russia Beyond. And they got the censorship hammer. So everything connected to Russia Beyond got closed down, which gave me the rights to the videos then, because the solution was, it's kind of like, well, we put all this time and effort into these videos, you might as well show them somewhere. So now they're mine. So in some ways, it's kind of a benefit, ironically. But also my political channel, the first one I started, Tim Kirby Russia, that got shut down by YouTube. It's kind of more for nuanced reasons, but I opened a new one called Tim Kirby Russia Reloaded on YouTube. But thankfully on BitChute and Rumble, my political stuff was never taken down. Same thing with the travel stuff. Rumble has been a lot more gentle with people. So.
Well, thank you. And it's just interesting that, yeah, for most of us, yeah, when something sort of like try to block us from what we believe we need to do, it's something else opens up, and we just
Yeah.
open our eyes, and then we just welcome
Well, yeah,
connection.
I can even say that just what you're saying. You know how it even says at the bottom of the screen about my Telegram channel. And to be honest, I never really sort of understood the point of Telegram, and it seemed kind of like maybe something more for celebrities, almost like it's kind of like I look at it and from far away it looks like Twitter. But then when I started using it, I was actually like, this is kind of a really cool platform, and I would have never started using Telegram if I wouldn't have been banned from Facebook and Instagram. I got the big bad block for life there. So I was like, well, now what am I going to do? And I gave it a try, and it turned out that we're at 10,000 subscribers. Yay. So apparently it was a decent decision. Am I the best, most interesting person on Telegram? I don't think so, but it's still a pretty decent format. So who knows?
Yes, I can vouch for that because I check on your Telegram, and
Mhm.
it's just good to remind the audience that whatever platform the Telegram may, even including Telegram, just remember there will always be trolls. There will always be,
Oh, yeah.
people trying to like just create more confusion. Okay, so
Mhm.
and just don't get comfortable. Always shield up, protection up,
Yeah.
and that's how we take care of ourselves and continue to do that. So I thank you, Tim, because Tim
Mhm.
had a little rough day, and
Yeah, yeah, rough one today. Everything was delayed. Everything.
but I
So.
wanted, and it's the best thing. Let's say, let me just start with something that many people also, even here in United States, right, or in other countries, with what's going on with our own countries, different countries,
Mhm.
sometimes, or our own states. Okay, so I'm in New Jersey, so there are many things that we just we it gives us an incentive to maybe it's time to move.
Mhm.
So, or maybe so, and I know people have already moved away from New Jersey, from New York, from California, and moving to certain states. So, but of course, they're also thinking what country. So I thought, how about, can you just start us with how's the migration process, or what's going on, including the refugees, so just
Okay.
talk to
Well,
us about that.
well, unfortunately, this is going to sound a bit weird because you have a guy come on and he calls himself his program Tim Kirby Russia, and yet I'm going to tell you that the immigration process to Russia is absolutely brutal. If you were to sort of put like on a table of different places that you could potentially go to across the world, I think Russia offers a very good lifestyle, especially if you tend to be more sort of religious conservative, this, that, and the other. It's a very, very great place to be. But getting here is a nightmare. It is absolutely not this kind of country like in Thailand. It's just kind of, hey, you just kind of go there and you get your tourist visa. And then every once in a while, you have to drive to Malaysia and drive back, and everyone's happy. And the police never look and question anything. And the weather's fun, and you get to go to your British pub and chill out with your buddies. It is not like that. In order to come to Russia, you really have to want to be here. And one of the reasons why it's tough is because the laws, the way the laws are written, there's a couple paradoxes. So first off, essentially, you need to have some sort of justification to immigrate to Russia. One of those could be being born in the Soviet Union. Um, there's a few kind of other weird ones. Some of them are, disappearing. You fought with the Soviet Union during World War II. There's not many candidates for that one anymore. But the ultimate one is generally being married to a Russian citizen, which means what if you're not married, or what if you're already married and very happy with your wife? Then you just can't come here. And that's the problem. The second thing that makes it very difficult about coming here is that in order to immigrate to Russia, you already have to be living in Russia, which sounds insane, but that is exactly the way it is. Because the only way to get to file for temporary residency, you have to be living in Russia. But there is no visa for like a spousal visa to get you to come here, even with your spouse, or some sort of weird visa that just lets you live here. That such visa doesn't exist. And very few people are able to jump over that line, if you understand what I mean.
So
So yeah.
does it mean you have to start as a tourist in for a tourist visa?
Yeah, for the most part of foreign people who've actually gone through this process, generally it's sort of a matter of sticking with it until you could sort of find a way through. Like with me, I came here on a student visa as an excuse to look for a job. This was back when it was easier to hire foreign people, and I was able to find a job, had a few work visas. Eventually, I got married, and that sort of opened the door for me. But I can tell you that my friend Father Joseph Gleason, who you might know, American born Eastern Orthodox priest. He lives way up north. He's had a few foreign families come to him, but essentially for them to immigrate, they have to kind of move there on tourist visas and kind of start going to church, getting to know the local church. The church starts to believe them, then sort of working out a deal with the Father Joseph, the church, and these people to sort of go and present themselves to the governor. The governor then might want to give his blessing to them, this, that. So it's almost like he has to make a special exception in the immigration rules for every family. It's nuts. He's done it a few times, but of course, Father Joseph can't have, if say 30 families showed up tomorrow, it would take him 30 years to get them to immigrate. You know what I mean? He can do about one or two families a year. He's got his own life, and it's very difficult. There's a few weird tricks that people can do. Like one is they're looking for what are called highly qualified specialists. So who is that? That is a now 200 profession list of jobs in Russia, where if you do that job and you make X number of money, a pretty high salary, then you can live here. The problem is, again, it's very difficult to get a job here as a foreigner in general, so it's kind of not working very well. But what some people do is they set up a business within Russia, and they pay themselves to be a highly qualified specialist. So essentially, they pay themselves to do something. However, they have to pay taxes on that money, and it's kind of a complex thing. But a couple people have done that. But I think that loophole is not going to last for long because the government's very aware of it. So I'm not really sure what the future is going to be. I can tell you though that I've participated in the Committee of Nationalities in the State Duma and told this stuff I'm telling you, I've told to them. They all sort of nodded their heads, but remember that committee is organized by one of the minority parties, so we'll see. In theory, they've addressed a lot of these issues, and they want to change the migration laws in order to make them more sane or relevant to the needs of Russia. But we'll see. It's very often difficult for a minority party to get anything approved.
I see. But Tim, it's not too different from the immigration rules or standards in United States, because and there's also a sometimes a this let's see, like for me, I had to come and have my work visa.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did that, and that takes over a year, 3 years, I believe, if I remember it correctly. And then once you'll be here, then it's up to me to apply if I want to be an immigrant or not. But you start with a work visa. But getting your family members, just as you mentioned, people have waited for over 12 years or just 12
Yeah.
years waiting. Now, again, it's up. Sometimes also there's some miraculous arrangement that, based on connections, then that could also be shorter. So, and it's also interesting. When I still remember when I was in Hong Kong and I traveled, I wanted to see China, and I was on the train. We were there already, but of course we couldn't cross the border because I didn't realize that I need to have a visa for China. But it's interesting, Tim,
Oh.
because the Philippine passport, they are not asking for a visa. But my American passport, you see all that
Mm,
geopolitical things
yeah.
going on. So, and so maybe what's your thought? Maybe why it is that difficult, or that's being, and so,
Oh,
and also, does it mean that you have less refugees coming from other countries? Because in United States, almost a lot of states are like sanctuary states, sanctuary
okay.
cities.
All right. Well, why is it is the way it is? Well, because generally, there's two major topics that if you ask Russian people, like Russian people who are born in Russia, especially, you ask them about these two topics, be they gun laws or immigration laws, they have no idea. And that's probably was true for me. Well, I knew gun laws in America, but about immigration laws, I pretty much knew nothing. I was born there. All my family members were born there. You don't even think about it. You're an American citizen from birth. And so most Russian people have never, ever, ever even thought about this. Furthermore, based on their lack of knowledge, there is this universal belief, okay, that it is extremely easy to immigrate to Russia. Every person, if we were to do like some sort of survey on the street of random people, we ask them, did you immigrate to Russia? And if they answer no, okay, so they didn't, they were born here, then you'd ask the next question: is it easy to immigrate to Russia? Oh yeah, it's the easiest thing in the world. Everyone just comes here, they just pay some bribe or something. I mean, literally, I'm doing this project called the American Villages, which is trying to set up a sort of village in a way, kind of for people who are sort of ideological refugees in a sort of sense, to come to Russia, but mostly just to kind of shed light on these nuts immigration laws and get people around these immigration hurdles. But anyways, after that, Russian people write me and they're just like, well, why don't you just have everyone pay a bribe? To whom? What bribe? How does this work? And no one knows. They're just sure that just foreign people just come here and they just pay money and they get to stay. No, no, Russia deports people all the time. So that's issue number one of kind of what we were talking about. And in some ways, it's this sort of also why things haven't changed, because in some ways it's a very sort of almost self-fulfilling prophecy. The laws are really hard, so Western people really don't immigrate to here in great numbers, which means there doesn't seem to be any demand. So why should we change the laws? You see, it feeds into itself, basically. And also it convinces them, the Russians, that Western people don't want to come here. Because if you knew how many times in a taxi, in a cafe, when people hear my awful accent and they ask, where are you from? For the 10,000th frickin' time. And they hear America. One of the top 3 comments is, well, you came here, but did you know that everyone wants to go to America? I cannot express to you how many times people said that exact same thing. So there's also this belief, overall, not just due to the laws, but that no one wants to come here. So why should they, change the laws or even consider it? Because no one wants to come here, is a big part of it. If you're talking about people of sort of a refugee nature, well, remember, millions of people have left the war zone in Ukraine. I can say the majority went to Europe, but I think like about a third of the total number has gone to Russia. However, they made a special exemption where if you have a Ukrainian passport, essentially, or a Ukrainian citizen, you can apply for temporary maybe you can even apply for citizenship. You can apply for something that lets you live here without any of these games about needing justification or being married or any of that. You just do it as part of like an emergency measure. So in a way that's one category of refugee. If you mean like let's just say people from Africa who are having a rough time and they want to seek a new life. First off, there's no way they're getting in here. The borders are very closed and also very well defended. And secondly, there's no welfare state in Russia. So essentially, like in Europe, there's this thing where you go there, you jump off the boat, the German people work, you do nothing, and the German taxpayers support your refugee lifestyle. In Russia, you're just on the street. If you don't have connections or you can't get a job, you just die. So that's one of the reasons why you don't really see that much of a like waves of migrants or whatever. And also, got to be honest, the border guards are very well armed, and if you don't surrender, they shoot. So that's also part of it. Unlike with European policies where I know in the United States, for example, with like Florida, is they had the policy where if any boat makes it to land, then you've essentially made it, like from Cuba, presumably. However, in the water, if the boat stays in the water, the Coast Guard can try to push it away or something. Whereas in Russia, it's so yeah. So the policies are much more tough. I'll put it that way.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
I know we could have another episode just to discuss about whether all our thoughts and perspective on immigration and the borders and everything.
Sorry, a little bit of a brutal realities there, but that's kind of the way it is. I've actually had the chance to actually walk up to the literal border in Finland, and it's not that tall, but it's 3 fences that are covered in like different barbed wire and razor wire, and there's 3 rows of fences. And they also know somehow there must be some sort of motion sensors because they know when something's moving there, and they can sort of like react to it. So again, yeah, it's a very different, much more harsh setup.
Well, for most of us, especially Filipinos, most of us really came and immigrate in many other countries, like let's say lawfully or legally.
Yeah.
So it sometimes that also is like a hard thing for me to swallow when everyone can just come in with no strict rules and regulation or the process, whereas many, like my let's see, my brother didn't make it here, and he passed away already because my mother passed. My anyway, my yes. So and then if a parent passed away already, you can't continue. It's very hard to continue the process, you see. So for me, I really like the fact that it would be strict. It would be strict.
Yeah.
I'd go for that.
Of course, because you jumped through all those hurdles and probably did all that paperwork. And don't you have to you
And
take like some
expand.
sort of long test about constitutional law to become an American?
Well, when you're here already, but most of us have to take an English test even in the
Mm.
Philippines, and then we come
Mhm.
here, and so it's really like a process. And I there will be so many more that you could share with us about the life in Russia, but
Mhm.
I'll move on, and
Okay.
I'll pass on to Hartmut, and
Mhm.
then we could continue again. Okay, thank you for
Sure
coming.
thing.
Hi, Tim. Well, pleasure to have you here back on the show. Um,
My pleasure to be here.
what I want to know is, for example, is it possible, for example, to get a tourist visa and then, for example, stay in work with a tourist visa and then go out for 5 days and come back?
Well, some of your viewers might be surprised, but absolutely. Despite the war, despite all this, all the Russian embassies are still issuing tourist visas. I know personally, and I've seen people get their tourist visa and come here to visit. I've seen it with my own eyes, so it is very much possible. However, as we were talking a little bit before we got on air, the price of airplane tickets has gone way up because you have to sort of fly around. You suggested Turkey. I know people have gone through Dubai and Delhi. So you kind of have to fly around the whole war zone and mostly, for the most part, fly around Europe. So the price can really add up, especially for people in the United States, Canada, and elsewhere. I guess if you're already in India, then nothing's changed, because you can just fly from India directly here. But yeah, so it is possible, and Russia has been a lot more welcome to visitors than you might think. I would say, although their immigration laws are harsh, the whole thing of come on and visit is Russians are actually very open to curious visitors. That is one thing that's different, and the tourist visas are not particularly hard to get, and not particularly expensive. About living here, one problem that is changing, which is kind of a little scary, is that for Europeans, so for yourself, then they previously had the sort of basically Russian visas tend to be sort of reciprocal. Like if a country says, "Hey, we're going to go visa free with you, we'll be visa free. You be visa free with us." That's kind of how they do it. They're sort of passive about this, and so America actually offers very good tourist visa terms to Russians. Okay, and so Americans can come here. They can live here. The tourist visa lasts for 3 years. You can be here 6 months. All you have to do is leave for like a day or two. I forget how long, maybe more than 24 hours, and you can come back. So in some ways, an American tourist visa almost allows you to live here. Of course, you can't work legally, but people get around that. Now, with Europeans, it seems to be currently that it's for every year you can be here 6 months. And I think they're going to drop that down to 3 months because I think that's what's happening for Russians in Europe.
Yeah.
So for Europeans to come here, it's just going to get harder and harder. Obviously, if you're coming here for a vacation, 3 months is plenty of time. If you're coming here because you want to build a life here or live your Russian dream or whatever, well, that's not going to work.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. And what is your experience concerning the language? Do the young people speak English, or what's the situation? For example, if people from foreign countries come to Russia, do they need to speak Russian before up front, or what do
Mm-hmm.
you suggest?
This is one of those ones where I might try to explain it. Like, I never took Spanish in school, but I do know, like, I don't know, gracias, muy bueno, and like a few other expressions. And we all know some naughty words in Spanish. That's generally what Russians know in English. So it's sort of like if someone were coming from Argentina and they meet some guy who looks like me in the Midwest and they're like, ¿Cómo estás? Da, 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 da. And the other person will just be like, okay. That's like, they're like, that's like something like, buenos dias. And that's it, And so that's kind of what they're probably going to encounter from 95% plus Russians. You do get your occasional English language fan or English language school teacher, but generally most people are not. However, we live in very modern times, and one thing I also explain to people is that on the one hand, you have to pass language tests that are increasingly difficult, but none of them are difficult to get your temporary residency, then permanent residency, then citizenship. So you do have to speak Russian in order to immigrate here to some extent. But again, these tests are like the most basic, easy stuff. But on the other hand, like we live in the 21st century, and you're ordering stuff online. I mean, you can basically kind of in some ways with Google Translate or like using Google Chrome to translate everything, you could sort of go to every store in Russia without ever leaving your house and have everything delivered and really not need to speak the language too much. How you'd get a job or a career or build a family or that's difficult, but you'd be surprised how many people have lived here for a long time and really don't speak the language. It's sometimes it's actually impressive.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So, because, yeah, for example, I would like to go to Russia, but you're right. I have to. I can stay there for 3 months, and then I have to go back for 3 months again as German.
Yeah. And like I said, then it'll be even worse because you'll stay here for 3 months and have to leave for 9 months or something like that. If the law passes, again, it's weird. They want to talk to us, all these foreigners. Hey, let's go to the State Duma, foreign people. Tell us about all your problems, this, that, and the other. And so there's certain factions that think, okay, this basically the logic is this. There's a sort of ideological battle between two sides. One side says, look, the West has proven to us to be our eternal enemy, which I kind of agree with. But their idea is the West is the eternal enemy. So that means the average person there hates us, which is the dumbest logic ever. But that's the logic of it. So we don't need these people from unfriendly countries coming here. I guess they can visit. They can visit, but that's it. Okay. And so they want to make it harsher. Then you have the other faction, which says, okay, guys, we're in a multipolar world. And the real enemy are people with this sort of like globalist mindset that hate humanity and want to bring us down. And hey, maybe we should actually try to bring like-minded people from across the world to Russia who want to be here. And we're going to be the shining city on a hill like America used to be. That's going to be our new job, or one of the few shining cities on a hill. And that's kind of the other competing logic that I'm more advocating for. Who knows who's going to win? Unfortunately, I think the more pessimistic logic is much more Russian. Russians like the pessimism. They love it. So we'll see.
And what is your experience with Russians as foreigner, as an American in Russia? Are they friendly or are they reserved? What is your personal experience?
Oh, well, I can't remember. There's this expression where they think there's something like there's peach people and coconut people, because peaches are soft on the outside and sweet, but kind of rock hard on the inside, and coconuts are hard on the outside and the soft sweet parts on the inside. And Russians are part of the coconut people, where they're kind of distrustful. They're a little bit more cold and reserved publicly, but then they're a lot more nice on the inside. Whereas, although there are plenty of great people in America, I'm sure you've met some of the kind of people in America who talk to you like this, but they hate your guts, So we kind of have the more peach people sort of way of doing things, where you dig in and there can be a sometimes rough inside. So I would say Russians definitely meet that sort of stereotype there. One of the problems is I'm kind of a strange person. I'm not trying to say I'm cool and I'm unique and I'm different than everyone. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm a very, very loner type of person, which means I'll put it this way. I don't really mind being a little bit outside of society on some level, because I am kind of a loner. So I don't really need friends or I'll put it this way. I've met a lot of expats throughout the whole world, or immigrants of a European persuasion. And there is this one kind of group of them where sometimes, if these people, like some of the other expats leave, they're like really sad and they have no one to talk to, and they go to the British pub by themselves, but the only people at the British pub are Russians or Thais or Vietnamese or whoever. And then they're all sad about it and they don't feel a connection to anyone. That doesn't apply to me. It doesn't bother me. Nothing. So it's kind of hard to say. I don't know. I know some definite tales of successes when foreign people come here and they really can integrate to society. I mean, if you start going to church here, you're definitely going to get accepted in that church community. That's for darn sure. Like I said, I play American football. I feel very accepted on the football team. But again, like I'm just a loner weirdo. Like the idea of like, oh, let's all go to the banya together and like drink beer naked. Like, no, let's not. Let's play the sport together. Let's not turn this into like a weird sort of marriage between men, but that's just the way I am. So I would actually say that you could definitely build some really good friendships with Russian people, but remember, if you guys have ever traveled overseas, sometimes there are certain people who might like use you as English practice, or Hartmut, in your case, German practice. You know what I mean? Whereas you meet someone and they're like this Germanophile, and they're like, "Oh my God, I love Germany. I took German in college," and they kind of just want to hang around with you so they can absorb a German language, or maybe get to know you to use you for connections in Germany. You see what I mean? So there sort of is that trap where you could kind of it's sort of like I don't know, maybe Grace, you can relate that. I'm sure every woman has at some point felt that men are kind of using her for her appearance. Yeah, they kind of want her for, her looks and maybe not so much something else. And you kind of feel that way as foreigner, where it's like, yeah, you just want me to help you immigrate to America. How the hell I could do that, I don't know. But I meant they're like, but you're American. You can help me immigrate to America. No, no, I can't. So there is a little bit of that side to it where you can be, I won't say exploited, but feel a little maybe used, that the friendship is based on ulterior motives.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. And when you can tell in short how you made it in Russia, because you told us in the last episode that you were looking for your roots and you found your roots, I think, in Poland.
Yeah.
And then you decided to move to Russia. And if you can explain the audience again in short term, how did you move to Russia? How was it for you, and how did you get it done there? Because
Okay, well,
now you're
in order to
established.
not repeat, but to keep it simple, on all my relatives, despite my last name is actually fake. Okay, it's what's real on my documents. In that sense, it's real, but it's not connected to my family history or anything. All my ancestors were Slavic. On my mom's side, they were Polish, and throughout communism and World War II and all these other upheavals and changes, their address stayed the same. And so my grandmother, on my mother's side, would write to my Polish relatives letters that would go over the sea, even during communism, back and forth, these letters and all that. So when I was like a teenager, I went to visit there. And definitely when I was a teenager, I was part of Team Loser. I was definitely one of the least cool kids at school. Obviously, well, there were, I don't know what I should say. This is going to come out bad. I wanted to say thankfully, but in comparison to the children who are mentally handicapped, I guess they kind of took a little bit of the heat off me. But other than them, I was loser enemy number one. And so you go to Poland, and all of a sudden it's like my life was new. People didn't know me. And in some ways, like I mentioned about this, like, oh, you're the cool English speaking guy. In some ways, this whole, like, you're from this other place that we've seen in Hollywood movies kind of actually gives you a little bit of social clout, a little bit of social status boost just by default. And also in Poland, I look exactly like everyone. Okay. And when I come from a black neighborhood in Cleveland, you definitely get to feel some racism. And then when you're in a Polish village, everyone's just like, everyone is like you. For the first time in my life, everyone looks like me. It's amazing. So I went back to America, and then I became a Peace Corps volunteer in Kazakhstan, because I actually wanted to be a Peace Corps volunteer in Poland and build a life in Poland. But that didn't work out. They said, do Kazakhstan now or wait 6 months. I didn't have the money or the opportunity. I was just like, okay, Kazakhstan now. And that's where I started to learn Russian. I had similar experiences in Kazakhstan where I felt like I was much more in line with society and had much more of a purpose. And I certainly wasn't a complete loser. It's ironically, that was the most broke I've ever been in my life. I had nothing. And yet I felt like I was, what's a good expression you could say on YouTube? I don't know, the king of the hill. I don't know. And so then after that, when that was over, I, for sort of what's that word called? Nostalgic reasons, I really missed like my buddies and stuff. But after I came back from Kazakhstan, I realized I kind of made a mistake, because my group of friends kind of fell apart in Ohio. and everyone kind of fell apart. And I was kind of just like, man, this sucks. I should have stayed in Kazakhstan. In fact, to be honest, I kind of blew it. There was a Kazakhstani girl who really fell in love with me, and I could have taken a job on an oil rig, or not oil rig, because they're on land, but worked with her in oil, and I didn't take it because I was nostalgic, and that was kind of a huge mistake that set my entire life back. So, minus one wife, minus one career in the oil industry, and so I kind of realized that I need to get back to this part of the world, or I'm just going to be a complete loser. And to be honest, let's all be honest here. What happens if a man is a complete loser? Zero success with women. Okay. And especially when you're 22 and your hormones are telling you to go out there and meet a lady, you need to get that status. Status is king. Hypergamy is real. So, I saved up some money, and I basically studied at Moscow State. But while I was studying, I looked for a job, and thank the Lord Jesus Christ, I had the opportunity to find one.
Brilliant.
So,
no, that's interesting. So, but the people understand that let's say you were prepared more or less to come to Russia. So the people they have to be prepared in order to come to Russia if they want to.
Well, yeah, this whole Peace Corps experience was essentially like a sort of experiment that had a golden parachute. Because with the Peace Corps, I mean, you're not there at gunpoint. If you choose to quit, you can quit. They send you to all these different countries around the world, and it's kind of your job. It's actually very, in some ways, an easy job, and in some ways, a hard job. It's easy because the standards are abstract. It's kind of just like, don't shame America. Okay, that's easy. But what they want you to do is go to this other country and try to do really good things and be like a local social activist. And that way I wasn't a good volunteer. So I didn't shame America. And one thing I did do is, did you know 1/3 of Peace Corps volunteers psychologically can't hack it? Like they mentally break down. And I actually made it to the end. So in some ways, I remember even the woman who was like my director, she said, I forget, she was actually a local. So she was like, Tim, you did not do much, but you did not complain. She said I was the only person who never called once to complain. So, yeah. So I guess that is true Russian grit that I had, or something.
Yes.
So,
mentality, definitely.
Yes. Yeah. So the thing is, with that Peace Corps experience, I sort of had this 2-year trial period to try out life in the former Soviet Union. And maybe I think that's definitely different than someone who are the people who want to come to my American village and all this, who are like, I'm 38, I have 6 kids, I'm an Orthodox Christian, I want to be living in an environment that is more in line with my religious ideology. What am I going to do? And this person has never been here. They've got a bunch of kids in tow and a wife, and that's a whole different ball game than single guy who had a 2-year golden parachute experience. So I understand that these are very different situations.
I see. And from the economical point of view, for example, how is it to live for Russian people in Russia? Do they have any lacks, or is prosperity there? Do you have, for example, what is the price for gas here in Germany? We pay $1.80, €1.80 for diesel. Yeah, this is very tough.
Let's see, how much are there? 70 rubles in there. Oh man,
70
hold
rubles
on.
is €1. Yeah.
Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. 180. Let's see. 180. Wait, 1.8 euro to ruble. How much is that? 100. Yeah, we pay a lot less. We pay. I don't know. So we pay less than 1/3 the price.
1/3.
Yeah, per liter.
Wow, that's less.
So you pay 155 rubles. We pay 48. I think it is.
48. This is less than €1. This is 80 cents.
Yeah. So that's not bad. I would say the real thing from an American standpoint is I pay for both my kids' phones and my own, and the home internet and cable TV is $17 unlimited. Yeah, 300 megabits a second, baby. That's what I'm using right now.
Unbelievable.
So Yeah,
That's
so certain
amazing.
things, certain things here are crazy cheap. What gets expensive in Russia? To be honest, I think food is overpriced. I
Okay.
would say that the one thing where I'm kind of like that, the thing that keeps me from living a more upper middle class lifestyle and drags me down, I think is, with these kids and the food, it's just like food, food, food. And, it seems like every day more and more food, 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 eat. And I think that the food tends to add up pretty quickly. But utilities are really cheap too. So on the one hand, I would say that Russian salaries tend to be really bad, but
Yeah.
things like utilities and all that are really cheap. Now, one thing that is a reason that would be for people to come here, especially people who are more entrepreneuristic. Is that a word? It is now. Is entrepreneurial. That's the word. Is that essentially there's this government program called being self-employed. And if you are self-employed, you have this app on your phone where you can, basically, like, I don't know, if you're an English teacher, you basically take the money, they send it to a particular bank account, and you make them a little check, and the government sees it, and the person gets the check sent to their phone or whatever. Long story short, you pay 4% taxes, and that's it. So if you're really entrepreneurial, you can you get to keep your money. That's probably one thing that happens when the prime minister is from the tax department. He seems to have a very good attitude towards that. So the Russian laws are very much oriented towards this idea of, if you work as an employee, you'll never get ahead. If you work for yourself, it's a green light, red carpet, go forward. And so, although I do some things as an employee, I do a lot of stuff on the left, as they say in Russian. So sort of side hustles. And it's great because you're keeping 96% of your money legally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's great. And what is concerning house rent of a flat or so? Is this also very expensive?
Yeah, well, one thing the war did, unfortunately, is it kind of killed one of my favorite things to tell people is how cheap houses are in Russia and all this stuff. Well, everything got more expensive. COVID kind of hit the wood, especially that OSB, which is in English. I think it's also called OSB, but it's chipboard, I think, for Ohioans. But that big 4 foot by 8 foot piece of flat board that's made out of these shivers of wood glued together. That's still expensive here. Gosh darn, it's 500 rubles a board. What is again? What is that? Hold on, we got to go. 500
70
rubles a
euros.
board.
It's
That's
around
like €6 a
$80.
board.
I think
Gosh,
$75 or $80.
what? Whoa! Oh, that, my goodness! Wait! You seriously? Wait? How much for one board of that?
Yeah, 500. No, wait a minute. 500 rubles. No, it's $7. $7 to $8.
Yeah, it's about $7 or something, which really adds up. Which I guess when you put things into dollars or euros, it doesn't sound like much. But I remember it in Russia being less than 300, like where that stuff was just like candy. It didn't cost anything. So a lot of stuff has gotten. First, wood got expensive because of COVID and also sanctions. Because apparently, a lot normal wood, like rough cut wood, the price came back down. But all this fancy stuff with particle board and all that requires glues from Europe, so it's expensive. And because now with the war, apparently cement is at a premium, and so everything's more expensive than it used to be. So my dinky abode that I bought many years ago, that I had to completely, gut renovate and install water and all that, it was 1,000,000 rubles to buy it, and then it cost about 700,000 rubles to actually renovate it and make it all year round living, which is in today's money 1,900 and 19,000, excuse me, 19,640 euros
Wow.
for my house. But now, guys, you're not going to find those prices anywhere, because people are like, Tim, I remember your videos. You bought your house not far from Moscow for 1,000,000 rubles. Dude, hook me up with one of those. They don't exist anymore. That's gone. That's vanished into history. I think pretty much you're not going to find anything under 2 million. So yeah, prices definitely went up on houses. For my American Village project, we were just quoted on a 100 square meter house for 4 million, lock, stock, and smoking barrel to build one, for example. And 4 million rubles would be in euros,
400.
46,000 euros to build a 100 square meter house, which probably is cheap for you in Germany. But for
Yeah,
Russia, that seems ridiculous and offensively expensive.
yeah, yeah.
Well, now I see John shaking his head. I guess John also is a little offended. So remember, salaries here are lower, man. They're lower. They are lower. But that's another thing is if you can somehow have like a job in the West and get that money over here on crypto. I know I have a good friend who I really want to go back and visit, who lives in Siberia. And he actually was working, and I think still is, for Hollywood, like doing stuff on the computer, 3D design and all this stuff, and the special effects and these games and all this stuff. But he was living in the middle of nowhere in Russia. So he has, this looks like a Scandinavian palace, So the real ideal thing is to somehow make money in Western currencies here. And then you really, those are people who tend to live really, really well.
And I have one last question, then I pass it to John. How can you transfer money from Russia to the West?
Oh, really? Unfortunately, now I know some people are, as soon as they hear the word cryptocurrencies, they're just going to feel sick inside their ears or their mind. And I was one of those people for a long time because this idea of crypto has been ruined by the crypto advocates who make it seem stupid. It's actually a very interesting concept that is not intuitive whatsoever. But if you can get used to it, in fact, I had to have one of my the sort of subscribers there really kind of show me with some screenshots how this works. But if you take the time to learn it, you can essentially really get around almost anything via crypto. So crypto is one way. There's a few people that somehow have certain mechanisms where you can use their services. There's a group called Let's Russia, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some fake ones. So be careful. Let's Russia on Telegram. Talk to those people. They could also help you with money. And the third way is just physically bringing cash here, because apparently you can bring as much cash into Russia as you want. You're supposed to declare it, but no one does. Because like in America, when you land, one time this happened to me, my children had apples. And so this little dog comes up to play with my kids and they're like, oh, look at the cute dog. And the dog's actually like the security, throw the apples in the garbage. So like they have all these dogs to sniff you and all this stuff. And in Russia, I really haven't seen that. Maybe they do. But generally when I've gotten off of international flights in Russia, you just get off the plane. So if somehow you can have a bunch of money on you, I guess they're not going to even look. But I have been told that's kind of hard to get money out of Russia. So whatever you bring, you got to blow it.
Yeah, correct.
So
brilliant. Thank you so much.
Sure.
It was a real pleasure again. And I pass it to John. Thank you. Have a good time. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, I'm shaking my head after hearing those prices. A tear-down bungalow here in Toronto will cost you $1 million.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And it's teared. You have to completely destroy the house because it's not even livable.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe in downtown Moscow. I mean, that's how things are, man. These really like super. Well, I guess Toronto. Well, Toronto's not the capital of this country. Well, it's the biggest city in the country. So I mean, that's comparable. I bought for my kids and their future. I bought for about 6 million rubles a very tiny, poopy apartment that I'm gonna have to pay off over the years. So that's what 6 million. So that was like $70,000 for a shack. I should say shack, a drawer, as they would say in Russian. So
a 0-bedroom loft in downtown Toronto will cost you 750,000 Canadian.
Okay, there's nothing comparable to that. Like you could get in Russia, even something downtown that's pretty decent for that. Yeah. Outside the city, obviously, you could get something amazing.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you're not in like Moscow or St. Petersburg, or you're
in and around Moscow. Sometimes the apartment I bought for the kids is in Moscow. The palace in the woods is not.
Okay. Because I'm Greek, and how prevalent is Orthodoxy in Russia, especially in the major cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg?
Well, it's one of those things where prevalent. The churches are everywhere. The church is everywhere. There's on free TV. There's a Christian channel called Salvation, which it's much shorter in Russian. It's Spas, 4 letters, Spas. But so there's a national Christian TV channel and it gets good ratings. And Does everyone go to church? No, I would say definitely there is a thing where in the cities less people do, but in the country people sure do. So, yeah, if you look up something like, let's do, hold on, maybe if we can do it in English, Christian March Russia. Will there be pictures that are good, or will it? Oh, well, here's Google is such a letdown. Anyways, well, I guess we have one.
Which was founded.
Oh, here we go.
Russia.
Maybe I'll put this into our little chat here, and hopefully you can take a look at it. But yeah, these whole Christian marches are very popular in Russia, and they get pretty big numbers. So, yeah, religion is. I wouldn't say we exactly live a religious lifestyle here, but it's definitely a notable part of life and about government and so on and so forth. Like if you look at any of the major events that President Putin has, he always has one representative from the major religions of Russia. There are 5. And of course, Eastern Orthodoxy is one of them. And it always is the one closest to the hearts of the majority. So.
You said there are 5. What other? I know Russian is huge with Russian Orthodoxy.
Yeah. So number 1 is Eastern Orthodox Christianity, specifically. They're all specific. 2 would be Sufi Islam. 3 would be the type of Judaism we have here. 4 would be Buddhism, and 5 shamanism. There are some people out east who relate their culture to these like shamanistic practices. And only a few years ago, they actually put shamanism as sort of a part of an official sort of protected religion. So basically, all these religions are the religions that are connected to the people of Russia. All other religions are considered sort of outsider religions. So in the past, there have been some scandals related to giving the boot to certain, to Scientology. I just walked past it today, the old Scientology center that's been closed down. Certain types of, Jehovah's Witnesses participated in a lot of sort of rabble rousing, as we'd say in English, or I mean to say like trying to get the population sort of stirred up against the Orthodox. So they're kind of troublemaking, so they got the boot. There's also been some sort of conflict with Hindus, actually, because Hinduism isn't one of those religions, and they've kind of wanted to build some sort of Hindu centers, and that didn't quite fly with the state. So, yeah.
I kind of agree with that, because if Toronto, like I'm looking at the contrast between that and how Toronto is. In Toronto, because of Mr. Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, everybody's allowed to do everything and anything that they want. So it's like you lose your identity as a community and as a country when you allow that. So I kind of agree with that. And I find it really important for them to hold on to those values. In the early stages of moving to Russia, how hard was it?
Well, it was hard because, especially because everything was unclear. Like I just kind of came in a bit naive, and I just thought, okay, I'll get a job here, and it'll be like America. You know, if you get a job here, eventually you somehow find some kind of way to immigrate, and it's like, well, that's not how it goes. So yeah, so it was very difficult. And there were definitely some scary moments where I like filed for temporary residency the first time on like the very last day, and I don't know how I got through it, but I did a criminal background check in America, but you're actually supposed to do it on the federal level, and I did it on the state level, and I can't believe they accepted it, because they were kind of like, what is this BS? I've seen these before. This isn't right. Why does it say Ohio? But they did accept it, thank goodness. So yeah, there were definitely some scary moments. Some real scary moments with this whole process. And in the past, they didn't let people have dual citizenship. So that was another thing that kept a lot of foreigners on the infinite permanent residency sort of thing. So yeah, so it was definitely very tough. Very tough.
It's cool. I'm only asking these questions because I may be doing a similar move, but it won't be to Russia. It will be in Europe, hopefully Greece. If this pans out. Well, mine's
one thing, man, like the Greek laws could be absolutely and completely different in their attitude towards all this. So I don't know. Like, for example, I know someone who was also from my hometown. We grew up together. And he also wanted to chase his ethnicity. So he went back to Hungary. To actually get Hungarian citizenship, you have to prove you have Hungarian ethnicity.
Same
which
thing
was
with
that was
Greece.
his. Oh, okay.
Same
Well,
thing
here
with
you don't.
Greece. Well, I proved that I did prove that I do have like my papers are in Greece, like, and
Well, yeah.
I'm allowed to own land and allowed to own land and purchase stuff in Greece. Like I have all that stuff. I checked. I have my ID card, or no, not yet. I applied for my ID card, so it's yeah. I'm just fascinated by your story because I want to learn, like, how did somebody from outside transfer into a different country with no heritage, because it's very fascinating.
Well, all my ancestors were Slavic, and when the Russian Empire existed, they were all on the Russian Empire side of things. But no, I didn't have any relatives here waiting to help me or anything. They've been sort of lost to time. Everyone that was on my father's side of the family. So, in that sense, no. But I mean, I guess the ultimate thing was getting married was the thing that sort of, I guess, opened the door really to that process. But yeah, I don't know. Again, because I do kind of look like most people here. Although, to be honest, I actually probably look more Polish than Russian or something of that line. But still, it's kind of like with yourself. I mean, when I look at you, if someone was like, guess what ethnicity he is, I would have bet Greek. I mean, you got the really thick, dark hair. Your facial hair is really thick, and it's also, the salt and pepper. That's very, very stereotypically Greek, So, I think it's easier. One thing, I'm always kind of mystified are the occasional Western people who are like French who come here, and they don't look anything like anyone. And I always kind of wonder, I'm like, I guess you have different motivations than I do, or they don't mind being different or something, or the occasional people too. Like, I've met two women who are American and they're really like super liberal, like everything needs to be as gay as it can be. And they choose to live here voluntarily and immigrate. And I'm always kind of like, well, I guess for them, the whole, like, maybe they do have political views, but maybe those political views are just of zero importance. They're like absolute last on the list and they like it here, but it's kind of weird. Because
how are those people viewed by the rest of the community? Because
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know. Especially because the one woman, I mean, she's great, but she's more like a kind of Midwestern gal, and she's got like 1 million tattoos, and she shares my sort of American way of talking loud, which in Russia is kind of a no-no for women. So I don't know, but she's happy, and she voluntarily, did all the paperwork. She's been an English teacher here for a long time. And actually, teacher is on the highly qualified specialist list. She was able to get her company to work with her. And I think she hired a lawyer and they got all this in. So she has permanent residency. But again, so I kind of one day I do want to actually pick her brain if I ever get sort of some free time with her. Like, you're really, really different. Because usually when you think about who is immigrant who comes to Russia, it's usually like man, first off, male mostly, someone who's kind of maybe like fed up with the politics stuff. That's kind of their motivator. Like, I want to be in this different way of seeing things. I read this book by Sergei Kurganyan. I read this book by Alexander Dugin. I read Dostoevsky, and I got this vision of what life could be like. And I went over there. Like, that's kind of the kind of person. And she's just my Midwestern sister, all tatted up, and lives here for some reason. So I don't know. I don't understand it myself, but she's happy. And I guess she's also respectful to the country, and she's never said a bad word about the country, but she's very liberal if you talk to her about her political beliefs. I don't quite understand it, but again, maybe that's just a low priority.
Maybe good for her.
Yeah.
The one thing that I actually wanted to ask you is the learning the language kind of thing, because I find it funny because here in Toronto is the same thing. I know people who have lived here for 50 years, moved from Portugal, do not speak a word of English. They don't even know swear words in English.
Oh. Well, I don't know, man. I do not know how anyone could live in that much isolation. I think there is some certain culture arrogance. I have met some people who are, let's just say, Anglo-Saxon, who really somehow live here without knowing the language, and I just don't know how, because it's just like, and even me, remember, dude, like I mentioned, I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to be cute and be like, I'm the Sigma male loner guy. I'm not trying to be cute. That's just kind of how I am. And even I have learned the language pretty well, even though I kind of don't really want to have like a million friends and socialize all the time and talk to people all the time. So I don't get it. And I am definitely not gifted with languages because people always yell at me, you've been here 15 years and your accent sucks. Yes, it does. I'm aware. I'm not Mr. Languages. So I don't know how people do it, but I guess they just want to, they live in an isolated existence with other people who speak Portuguese, or they have zero respect for Canada or zero appreciation of it. I don't know. I can't understand that either.
It's a little bit of everything, because I know in Greece you don't have to learn Greek to get around. You can get around by speaking English, but you can get around a lot easier speaking Greek.
Mm-hmm.
Here,
yeah.
You're just in your little pocket, and who cares? You're a little with the Portuguese community, the Italian community, the Greek community. My grandfather never spoke a word of English.
Interesting. Did he ever tell you why?
He just didn't care to learn.
I see. Well, maybe he was too old, but again, I just don't understand that. That seems awfully disrespectful. Yeah. Especially if they're happy with this life in this country, you'd think they'd want to, but yeah, I don't know. Well, I can also say one thing is there's the whole myth that Russian is like this insanely impossible language, and it is different, and it requires a little bit of a different way of thinking, but all the things about it that are sort of different for the most part are systemic, and sort of like once you learn the system, you're kind of get over it. Like you've probably seen this. In fact, I think I actually have it because, oh no, it's not where I thought it was. No, there it is. I don't know if you can see this image. I'll send it to you guys. It's basically, there's a notebook and it says what on there, like run, ran, running. There's like 3 words of that. And then it has all the versions of the word for run in Russian that theoretically exist. So first off, they're lying because they have running like, well, you know how in English we have like a overran, like to overrun something is like a word, but it includes run. So first off, they added words like that have run in them to that list. So that's lie number 1. And lie number 2 is that all those crazy endings are done systemically. So once you know those endings, you could apply them to any word. It's kind of like in Russian, where this is our Russian lesson for today. If a word is male, okay, it ends in a consonant, that makes it male, and you have niet. You put the letter A, basically the letter A at the end. So it's like Oleg, niet Olega. Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, niet Clevelanda. I don't know what else. You could say mech is sword. Niet micha. Mech a. So again, it doesn't require you to know this gigantic list of a million things. It's a system. No, male word, at the end. Done. When there's none of it. And it's just essentially getting used to that over and over again. So that list is something that Russians even share, and they think it's funny that their language is so hard when it's all a system. Or it's like, you take a number and add 3 to it. So you go 10, 13, 21, 24, 33, 36. Oh my God, dude, how do you know all that? Because it's a system, It's the same thing.
One more question, I'll pass you on to Grace. Where was that question?
That I can't tell you.
I do not have the answer to
that
question. That's what I wanted to talk about. Being used by locals. You said that it's easy for them, or actually no. Let's go to the technology, because I'm a huge tech freak.
Oh, okay, technology, cool.
How advanced is Russia with their technology? Are they like Israel, like the next Silicon Valley kind of thing, or are they more like Cleveland?
Oh boy. Well, as we've noticed, maybe in terms of military technology, Russia certainly tends to be ahead of the game. I would say that Russians are actually very open to technology, even older people. And I'm not saying that like every elderly person in Russia is like some sort of like C++ programmer, but people here seem to be, on the one hand, very conservative, but on the other hand, they seem pretty open-minded to embracing new technology. So yeah, I would say Russia is a pretty open to high tech kind of place. But you know, the real leaders so far, at least, of sort of the world of, let's just say, social media and Web 2.0, it's really California. That's the world leader of that. Where even after all this, the massive firings with Google and Facebook and all that, so far I think that's still more the world sort of capital of all that. But I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of tech companies here. There's a lot of video game companies here. They're actually starting to make they've for a while been making, you know, computer chips and all that in Russia. And so, yeah, I would say Russia's definitely a place where there is a tech industry. There really is. I can even compare to California. I don't know, but California seems to be slipping down as we speak. So I'm not really sure what to say. Although one thing is the government did, I think, actually put in an order or a tender for Russia to finally have its own operating system. Because everyone kind of sees that, like, Windows and Android being on every device. Well, yeah, that's not good for state security. So we may actually have a sort of weird new cottage industry within Russia of people that want to make compatible programs and all those other goodies for the upcoming Aurora operating system that will come to dominate our lives. Oh, another thing about systems is, remember how when they threatened to take Russia off of SWIFT, the thing that makes Visa and MasterCard work, they did that, but Russia had time to prepare, and they made the Mir cards, and the Mir cards work. And so Russia was able to make its clone of, SWIFT. Zoom, Russia has a clone that works way better called Telemost, Yandex Telemost, way better. There's Google Drive. Well, there's Yandex Drive. There's Uber and all that stuff. There's Yandex Taxi, and there's another one. I can't remember the name of it. There's Google Maps. Well, there's Double Geese, which are some maps here that everyone raves over. There's actually two competing ones. So as you see, there's definitely everything that exists in America, there's a Russian clone of that works very well. Mm-hmm. So maybe some of the ideas aren't necessarily the most original, but the cloning is done very well.
Just a follow-up, one follow-up, and then I'll pass you on to Grace.
Sure.
What about AI? How are they adapting to the recent surge with artificial intelligence coming into the fold, especially with ChatGPT and Swell AI and all those other?
Dude, that's beyond my knowledge. All I know is that the government, including Putin himself, like the big speaking sort of heads of the government, said that they understand that AI is part of the future and that they're supporting it. So that's all I can tell you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Tim, so you have 6 kids?
No, I have just two. Just two.
2 kids.
I'd love to have 6 though. That'd be awesome, but it didn't work out that way. So
you still have time, I think.
Maybe.
Cheaper by the dozen, so they said.
Yeah, something like that. Although, as you can see, the hair's getting pretty gray there, so we'll see.
Well, how are they in school? What's the school system like that for the kids, the children, and their books, etc.? Because I'm sure you know about the critical race theory and then all the sex education that's happening with our children in America.
Well, I can tell you one thing. On the one hand, yeah, this sort of like that this racial hatred as an official part of education, of course, doesn't exist here. The whole rainbow colored flag stuff that just is gone. That's actually propagandizing that amongst children and now even adults has become illegal. So you're not going to have to worry about that. But the one thing I can tell you is that despite what maybe people say, one other good thing, homeschooling is completely legal in Russia. So in a lot of countries, homeschooling is not legal, but you can homeschool your children here, everyone. So that's also nice. They just have to learn Russian and certain state minimums. But I can tell you that my kids have been in both the American system and the Russian one. And gosh, in America, they teach them how to read much better. Like just the way they taught them how to read. I don't know. I kind of like the American system because people kept telling me like, you got to be afraid Common Core math is coming to destroy everything. I don't know. The math they had in America was better. The reading, especially the learning to read stuff, was way better. But like my daughter said once, she's like, I love going to school in America much more. It's like, oh, why? Because it's so easy. I'm like, oh, that's not a reason to love it. But I would say in some ways I'm kind of a little bit happier with the results they were getting in America. Yeah, in Russia everything's kind of a little bit chaotic. After the Soviet Union collapsed, it's like, which textbooks are we going to use? And there's a few different competing ones. And, a lot of these teachers seem to, I don't know, at least at my kids' school, not exactly the highest level of professionalism. So I don't know, but I think that problem could be everywhere. So long story short, if someone has the willpower and the energy, you should probably homeschool your kids. Yeah. So, yeah. But then again, one thing where Russia does do better, even if they don't teach it the best, in my opinion, but what the results are, they really push math. And like, I think I had algebra in 6th grade in America. Here you have it in like 2nd grade, and the kids get it. So like, they're way ahead of the curve on math. Other stuff, not so much, but with math, yes. And I did look at my kids' history books a few times in Russian, and no major complaints. One thing I could say then again is someone has a design degree, badly organized. But being badly organized is a little bit different from being filled with bad information. So yeah.
And you are very cross-culturally oriented. What are like the holidays that they observe in Russia?
Oh, well, the biggest holiday for everyone is New Year's, the January 1st New Year's. And I say the January 1st one because Old New Year's on the old calendar is also observed. And that's what, January 14th, 15th, 16th. I always forget what it is, somewhere in there. Okay. So there's actually 2 New Year's. There's new and old. Now, the ethnic minorities within Russia observe another different 2 New Year's. There's Sabantui for people who live in colder parts of Russia is in June. So their New Year starts in June because they live in the really cold places. If you celebrate Sabantui, and then some other cultures celebrate Nowruz. And Nowruz is New Year's in March. So sometimes, depending where you live in Russia, you could have 4 New Years in one place. Also, some people just for fun like to make an excuse to kind of celebrate Chinese New Year's. And interestingly enough, the idea that like the Chinese have, there's a year of the rat, year of the dragon, all these animals. In Russia, they do that, but it has nothing to do with your birth. But they like just this idea that there's this Chinese system. And this has been here since I've been here. It's not new. They just have like an official animal for every year. So if it's year of the rat, then it's just rat year for everyone as like the symbol of the year. So you'll see on like all the calendars that they have, like it's 2024. They'll have rats all over the calendars, cartoon rats. And you might buy someone like a candle shaped like a rat for 2024. So they kind of use the Chinese system, but again, it has nothing to do with your birth or you. It has to do with the symbol of the year. So that's New Year's. Holiday number 2 is Easter, which is a little bit different date-wise from the Catholic Easter. And that is definitely a very widespread holiday. That's definitely when the churches are very crowded. So number 2 is Easter. Maybe tied with Easter is Victory Day, which is May 9th, celebrating the victory over World War II, the end of World War II. That is always a very serious one where there's the big parades in Moscow. There's parades in every city in Russia. And those are kind of the big ones. The rest of the holidays tend to get kind of smaller and smaller. Like there's National Unity Day at the beginning of November, which kind of has like political protests and stuff, kind of usually positive protests, sort of like we're going to do it. Yeah, those are kind of, I guess, the big holidays. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but yeah, New Year's is kind of the big fun holiday of all of them, but also because there's New Year's and then it stretches sort of the old New Year's and all that. You get 10 days off of work. So like from the 1st to the 10th, you're just off. So because Christmas on the old calendar is on January 7th. So it stretches from New Year's new calendar through Christmas old calendar. That's why it's so long. And in May, they still sometimes celebrate May the 1st is like May Day of Great Labor for Communism. So in May, you also very often get a lot of days off. Like no one works the first 2 weeks of May. So it's fun time.
LGBT parade, rainbow parade.
No. That's against the rules since the start of the special military operation. That's That's over. So
how about drugs in school or at work or in general? How rampant it is, and what's
man,
going on with it?
I'm kind of outside of that, but I would say it's definitely less. Well, I'll put it this way: it's not socially acceptable. Whereas in America, over time, there's always the people like, well, we should just give out needles because they're going to do it anyways. We should just legalize this because they're going to do it anyways. That logic doesn't really suit Russian culture. Of people do something that's wrong, and enough people do it, we'll legalize it. That's not how things work here at all. So I guess there's somebody using drugs because like even by Fort Kirby here, couple months ago, maybe more than a couple months ago, I don't know, 6 months ago, last fall, I saw some guys walking around with a shovel. And what does that mean? If someone's a drug addict in Russia, like apparently the dealers, they put like a one-time use GPS tracker in like the bag with the drugs. And then somehow there's some sort of like cryptocurrency transfer, and they dig a hole to hide the bag in the woods. And then they send like the number to the guys, and then the guys have to go dig up the bag with the drugs. So like with Russia, if someone's a drug addict, they walk around with a shovel because they're looking. So that's kind of one phenomenon, but I don't know. You really don't see much of that. And I think some of the statistics about Russians drinking less and less every year match reality. So I think we're sort of on the right track here in terms of substance abuse. But obviously someone's doing something somewhere. So, but also sometimes people grow out of it, When everyone's in their 20s, it's party time, man. But then you have your first kid, and it's kind of like, well, time to move on.
And the right to bear arms?
That's one of the ones where I think we really in Russia need to consider what we're doing here. It's a little bit of a contradiction in terms. So the laws in Russia about this are called on gun, which translates to on gun, which is kind of funny sounding. But anyways, it says, according to Russian law, we have the right to defend ourselves with smoothbore weapons, which opens also an interesting sort of can of worms. What defines a smoothbore weapon? Would an assault rifle that doesn't have the actual rifling in the barrel, the little things that make the bullet spin, is that a smoothbore weapon? Maybe. But then you have to do this weird thing where you have to buy like a up to 2-shot smoothbore weapon for like 1 year and then have it for a year. And then you can buy one that's semi-automatic, and then you can buy an actual rifle maybe later. So first off, it's kind of weird, and you kind of have to do this like waiting game. And it's supposedly your right to defend yourself, but you also have to kind of like prove to the government that you're not insane to buy it. You also have to show your local sheriff that you bought a gun safe that's drilled into the wall of your home to show that the guns won't be stolen easily. So there's a lot more to it, and it's a kind of a lot vague. Another thing that can happen is that in Russia, you're supposed to be allowed to use force equal to or lesser than someone who attacked you. So, for example, some guy attacks you with a knife, and you pick up a rock, and you happen to beat him to death with a rock, okay? Well, he came at you with a knife, you came at him with a rock. They're both sort of hand weapons, and okay, you're good. Go on, get out of here. Well, what if someone, especially Grace, for you, someone comes at you, and or they're outside your house acting really weird, and you take a gun and you shoot them, and you try to shoot them in the leg, but they kind of wander off and they drop dead somewhere else. Well, they could say that, well, this person didn't directly present a threat, and you used more threat than they presented, and you could get in trouble. But the problem is with this, it's extremely inconsistent. And that's another problem with this whole thing about like self-defense and gun rights. Everything is sort of really vague and really inconsistent. And I think it's also something that's going to be important because supposedly, so we have this system, right, where we kind of have a Second Amendment, but not really. And then recently the government's like, well, we need the average man to go and defend the borders. They want common Russian citizens they're going to try to put together something where we can like form militias. And it's like, okay. So again, it's like, we're going to form militias, but then I have to like buy a training gun before like I buy a real gun, or we're a militia without guns, which is useless. Like, what is this? So I think it's one of these things where one of the problems is because Russians all believe that guns are illegal in their country, which is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. But if you ask people outside, 8 out of 10 people will tell you guns are illegal here. That's number one. So there's no public discussion about it because everyone thinks you can't buy a gun, even though you can. It's mental. So the issue number one, and then issue number two, because no one really knows about it. Like, there's no discussion about this. I really think that this is definitely something that kind of needs to be worked out or thought about, because it's like, you know, on the one hand, the government's saying, yes, Russian man, stand up and defend your country yourself. Okay, could I just walk out and buy a gun today? No. You know, it's kind of nuts. I don't know what they want from us, but it's very inconsistent and very frustrating, and it's something that needs to be fixed. And especially, like I said, about this thing of you can't use greater force than the person who assails you. I think there needs to be also a different logic to that, because sometimes things happen, and I don't know. Because like, well, one time, one guy, he would not leave me alone because of my accent, and I whooped him. So he would not. I told him, I walked away from him 3 times, and on the 4th time, I just took him out. And one of the first things I heard when I got home was like, you know, if he has like a brain hemorrhage, you'll go to jail. Why? You know, a lot of the stuff really, again, it needs to be kind of worked out, because I used then force that wound up being lethal against force that against me that wasn't lethal, and so it's not a good, I would say it's far from a good situation. One of the good things, Russia, though, is since no one really, the police aren't exactly enthusiastic to arrest people. So that's one thing that sort of helps out, is if Russia actually really enforced its laws, maybe it would be unpleasant to live here. But since everyone's kind of just like, things work themselves on their own, whatever, you kind of actually get this feeling of being like an old time America, you know?
It's
So
that part when you said it depends on which how you kind of like defended yourself. They have to redefine that, because in the moment when you think you're defending yourself, you can just grab anything to defend yourself, right? So that has to be redefined. Okay, so now this one, the hot topic in the United States always the time, and how are the taxes?
well, like I mentioned about that, if you're self-employed, you're paying 4%. But that's up to a certain amount of money. That's up to how much money a year? Like 2.5 million rubles a year or something. Then after that, you have to start a individual entrepreneurship, which is more organized like a business, and that's 6 to 9% taxes. But most of them are like 6%. That's on kind of another level. But it's 6%, and you have to put $300 or something into what in America we call Social Security. Europeans usually call that pension. So with this individual entrepreneurship, you're building your Social Security or pension, and you're paying generally for almost all people at 6% taxes. So it's a little higher, but that allows you to earn as much money as whatever you want. So that's really good. The problem is when you're an employee, that's where the problems start. Because if you're sort of an employee, you pay 13% federal taxes. But then you also have to pay every month into Social Security, and the amount you pay into Social Security is pretty big. And I think it winds up kind of being something like in the United States, where ultimately, I think it winds up to be like 30-some%. So employees tend to be very expensive, as opposed to, say, individual contractors. Like if someone was to say, hey, Grace, you know, I want you to come on my TV show. We're willing to pay you an honorarium of 10,000 rubles. And you were like, said, okay, that's great. I work this one job. I work as a nurse, but I have my self-employment app on my phone. So you would lose 4% of that 10,000 rubles. However, for every 10,000 rubles that a Russian employee of that TV channel would be making, they'd be losing somewhere in that sort of 30% range to taxes, you see? So again, the Russian system is very much, for whatever reason, maybe it historical or by planning, really pushes people to work for themselves.
Do you know
because you just make more money?
Do you know if it's a written law that the income taxes must be paid?
Well, do you mean the United States about how we have this goofy Federal Reserve system and income taxes, or do you mean about in Russia here?
In Russia, first in Russia.
Well, one of the nice things about Russia, which is good from an American standpoint, is an American we have to file to the IRS, like our, yearly taxes and all that. We have to do that. We better not screw up or we're in trouble. Whereas in Russia, it's always the person who's the employing, not the employee, the employing side, they file it. So if you work at a company in Russia, say it's a big company, you never even see this. They tell you what your salary is generally. So say they tell you your salary is 100,000 rubles a year. It's actually 130, probably something. But they deal with that. You don't even see it. You don't worry about it. They send all that stuff. You do nothing. Okay? So in some ways, living in Russia can be less stressful than America because unless you're in the accounting department of a company, you really don't have much to do with your taxes. Or like for me, the individual entrepreneurship. Once a month, I get a message from the federal tax services that I need to pay like 600 rubles or something in taxes or whatever, 800. In fact, I forgot to do that. I should do that after we go before it goes late, and it's an awesome program.
And the last one is about property taxes.
Very low because first off, they're very low to begin with. And the value of things in Russia, according to the, what is that in English? Holy moly. The government's map, we'll call it, their magical map has the value of what things cost, not the market value, what you'd actually pay for it, but the value of government assessment. And all these assessments tend to be very low, like crazy low. So like, I have 2 houses and I usually pay about like $8 a year per house, $8 a year. So yeah, which is much. How much will you pay in property taxes in Canada? I can't even imagine.
In Toronto, it's about 3% of the value of the house. So if it's usually the average house here is about $2.5 million, a 3-bedroom house.
Wait. So hold on. Okay, stop. So if you have a million, then 1% of a million would be what, $10,000?
Yeah.
So that's $30,000 for like oh my gosh. Well, I pay 8. So there you go. So, yeah. So thankfully that's the way it is. And generally one thing that's very good, whereas sometimes our Second Amendment stuff in Russia is vague and confusing. And that is definitely a turnoff for a lot of Americans. Again, I think it's something we need to make a decision about in Russian society. One thing that is good, ironically, a former communist country has the best property rights laws in the world. It is so hard for anyone to take your property away, even if you own like back taxes in some amount of money. Obviously, my taxes, it takes a long time for them to add up. But, you're not going to lose your house if you can't afford to pay for it. It's really, really stacked on the side of the citizen for whatever reasons. Maybe because I think in some ways, some of the rich guys like it that way. They're like, well, if I lose my business, I'm not going to lose my mansion. So I think that could be where that comes from. But anyways, private property in terms of like your house and stuff, the laws here, mwah. Second Amendment here, other things can be the migration laws in terms of you want to come here are the worst. But in terms of like property rights, it's amazing. It is so good. It is so easy after someone who's bought 3 pieces of property here. Everything is so clear. When you own stuff, you really own it. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you so much. This is wonderful. So this is going to be enjoyable to share this because many people are keep wondering how it is to move to Russia and
good.
to live in Russia. Okay.
All right.
So thank you, and John. Thank you, John. Thank you, Hartmut. And we got the news, and we offer prayers for Roy's family. That's why he couldn't come. His father just passed away.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's yeah.
But we continue to keep each other in good thoughts and prayers, and to everyone who's doing what they need to do to spread truth and freedom and to get themselves better and better and be protected, especially for our families. Thank you. And Tim, do you have anything more to share that's so important, and invite them for whatever you're doing? And okay.
Well,
Please.
I would just say that if you want to just see a crazy rundown of news and events in Russia, that's where you go to Tim Kirby Russia hardcore on Telegram. But if you want to see like all my videos and stuff, the political stuff is always under the Tim Kirby Russia brand. You can find that on Rumble. My trips, like traveling stuff, is called RTTT, Russia Tips, Tricks, and Travel on Russia. The problem is the English language name for YouTube is now like Tim Kirby's Travels. You can find them on YouTube, but why not watch it on Rumble? Because on Rumble, they're never going to delete it. So that's where you should subscribe to there. And also, if you look for the This Old Russian House, that's the project where I remodeled my house in Russia. That might be interesting for you. So, yeah, that's about it. Look for me on Rumble. You'll find me.
Thank you. And I think Rumble keeps upping their game. One could do live stream. I'm just not too techy, but anyway, I heard about that. So thank you for everything. And source bless, God bless, and see you again. Talk to you in the next many months. Okay, we'll give you a little break because I know
you. That's okay. I'm always ready to come back. All right, take care.
Don't forget, and to the audience, don't forget to share, okay? And like us and subscribe and donate whatever you can to all of us. Thank you.
So anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you like the opinions coming out of my big fat mouth, then join up on my Telegram channel. That's Tim Kirby Hardcore on Telegram. Link, of course, in the description.